Thank you very much. I would say, I think Helena agrees with me that like your words were very well chosen and actually points really much about like our topics and about also the problems which come with this pots and people creating. And so I like just continue what where you just started. You're absolutely right. These pots are showing you the people of the past, but also showing you the people of today, which are like dealing with this material culture. And which you will see in our lecture, we are pointing a little bit at least also on the problems which come with this. Dealing with material culture, which is like already 3,000, 4,000 or even older, that only interpretation can be today. Like we are dealing with evidence, but still it's like our like mind which like makes us, out of this evidence kind of like builds the history behind it. And let me tell you that about, I think it's now already 12 years ago, that I was sitting actually where you were like now sitting, not here in this beautiful like town, but in another beautiful town, which is called Heidelberg. And I was also a theology student like you. And I was studying Old Testament, and like the more and more I wanted to, like I was studying the Bible, I realized that there are people behind it, which were writing that. And the more and more I was also realizing that it was like not like just a God-given like book, but like people which are like speaking through with God through us. And so these people were sitting not like me in Heidelberg looking at the medieval castle there, which like when you see the paintings of the past, they're always envisioning the biblical author like sitting at like ancient desks and like in churches or something. But no, they were sitting actually in Israel, and I not there. And so I realized I have to go there. I have to like see these hills. I have to see what they see, and maybe I can get a glimpse on that. So I did it, and I went for excavations, and I realized, wow, okay, now my view changed completely. And I think that everyone who has been already in Azekah with us, or like in another place in Israel, that like you realize something, that the light is still the same one, that the sun rises in the same way there. And even though it's so much, like so many years past, it's still something which we can grab on, and it makes you understand this like text, the stories, which you're like actually dealing with since you're like a little kid, which you heard in church, even much better, and even much more in depth. And so for me it went even further, and I went really into archaeology so deep that I went to the actual pots and the ceramic, and I was like pulling out these ceramic cooking pots out of the earth, which people didn't touch since about 3,000 years. And this was for me, there at this point. And now starts the research. And so today, I don't know if you realize that we are doing a little flip. We're not starting in a chronological way. Like maybe you saw that we are starting now with me with like Philistines, late Bronze Age, Iron Age. And not with like Helena, like which is like actually much earlier. But we thought that it might be better for you to get into the subject. That you, when I talk about like with about like groups of people which you already know from the Bible itself, and so like your entrance into this like little bit different topic, what you usually like hear in theology, will be a little bit easier, this transition. So as you see in my title. We are dealing with a transitional period today, which is between the late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age. And this does not work. Great. Now my flow is gone and it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? It's on. I think the battery is off. So maybe I use the mouse. And then... Oh, it's fine. I can use the mouse. Here, it works. Try. Okay, so every transitional period, like if it doesn't matter if it's like the transition between the late Bronze Age and the Iron Age, it can be the transition between the Hellenistic and Roman period. It has its own questions always. You always ask questions. Okay, what are the characteristics of this transition? Like it's not like that. Like in the late Bronze Age, for example, the people were there. One day and say, okay, tomorrow is the Iron Age, we are throwing all our pots away and we are getting a new set of kitchenware. So we always ask, okay, what are the special characteristics? What are like different and similar to the periods before and to the period after? And then we can ask, go deeper in the question of settlement structure and material culture. Here that you have it seen in the timeline where we are speaking about today. So we have like the LB3, which is like, you will see in a second, approximately the 12th century. And then we have the Iron One, which is 11th and 10th century, and like it's like buffered in between the Late Bronze Age and the Iron Age 2. Iron Age 2, just to that you are having like a little bit historically, there we are like already in the Kingdom of Judah and with the big kings. So now the questions, like every transitional period has also specific questions, and in the case of the Iron Age 1, here we have something which comes in, which I want to call the biblical bias. So when you are like talking about the Iron Age 1 and about like the 10th century, the 11th century, as a theology student or like every other like a researcher for that, also archaeologists, you have to jump on, okay, there are a group of people coming in this time. There are the Israelites coming, the Philistines, we know about that from the Bible. So without even like knowing that from the start, you're looking at the archaeological record already with this thing in your head. And this you have to keep in mind always when you do research and when you are listening to what other people, the research other people did. And this is exactly what Jan said us before. Like there are researchers behind which are interpreting this pottery, and they have in this period at least, they have like already the Bible a little bit. Even if they don't want to, a little bit in the back of their head. So in the Iron One, we are asking about like Israelites, we are asking about Philistines, and the Canaanites, they are also there. So this is something what I want to do with you a little bit today. To go over that, here we have, by the way, that you have the absolute chronology, what we are talking about. Maybe it's for you a little bit easier to connect because you're usually not dealing in theology with like relative terms like the Iron Age 1 or the Late Bronze Age. So, just to give you the general outline, first I will be like, in the first part of the class I will be very general. I will have like more like a little bit background, and because we are talking about the Philistine culture in the second part, I'm focusing on the Shephelah. What is the Shephelah? The Shephelah is the lowlands between the coastal plain and the highlands, and this will be like the core of later on of the Kingdom of Judah. So this is why for the earlier periods it's for a longue durée approach, it's important to focus on the similar region, which is in this case the Shephelah, the southern coastal plain. And as many of you know, what is located really in the heart of the Shephelah is Azekah, and I will take Azekah as a little bit like as a case study to show you the material culture of the people. So we'll start with you in the middle of the Late Bronze Age to tell you what is the historical situation where we are coming from, and then I will show you on the example of Azekah what does the material culture look like, so what the people for ceramic used, what like type of other material culture we have there. And then I will come to the LB3, which is the next point, where we have the so-called collapse, the crisis years of this period. So we are going into the transitional period, and in the second part of the class, I will go on a research question, which is like dealing with the distribution of Philistine ceramics, and like if we can look at it differently, what people looked at before. So now we are starting with the first part. Again, here that you know where we are in the timeline, we are now in the 12th century. And in general, the 12th century is a period of like trade connections. We have the big powers of Mitanni, Hatti, Assyria. We have Egypt down here, and they all were interconnected and were speaking with each other and were trading. What are the evidence we have for this? We have evidence on hand, like archaeological evidence, which is like here. This is the evidence from the Boon shipwreck, which was found in the front of the coast of Turkey, and had beautiful finds from this period. Like this are copper ingots, what you see up there. You have like gold, you have like beautiful ceramic, you have tons of this like storage jars here, which you see on the side, which were filled with bitumen, with raisins, and other goods. And figs, I think, were also inside. So this here we have like really on the ground, like in a time capsule, this shipwreck, which shows us a ship sank, a sinking ship in the 13th century, which like shows us all the material culture from back there, and gives an example of the trade connections between the big powers. We have also like written texts, like here we have the Amarna tablets, where hundreds of them were found in the capital of Akhenaten in Egypt. and reporting of the trade connections, reporting also of marriage connections between the big powers, a little bit Game of Thrones there. I think you should read into that. It's very interesting. And so this is another example where we learn about this region, and we also learn about our area, the Shephelah, that it was an area which was ruled by several city-states, which were ruled by elite groups, which also communicated with each other and with the pharaoh in Egypt. What is the political situation? This, the tablets and other inscriptions in the material culture shows us is that we have the Hittite Empire very strong, and that in the Shephelah and in general Palestine, we have they're raising up and going against Egypt in this period. And so what's happening in the Shephelah, the southern coastal plain, is that Egypt tightens its administrative system and increases its military personnel. So we have a stronger hold. How we are seeing that is that we have especially by this big pharaoh of Ramses II, that he has huge building endeavors in the region, and we have this administrative centers also in Bet Shean, but especially in our where we are speaking of on the southern coastal plain in effect, which is you see here this governor's residency, which is very impressive building in Egyptian layout. And you have these Egyptian vessels were found there, and also other inscriptions and everything, which shows us that there was at least one person sitting there which was connected to the Egyptian administration and was administering the region there. And so Egypt maybe not have been there with big military presence, but it had a hold on the region and was governing that, and most probably initiated by Ramses II. The next pharaoh, which comes and has to go in there again, because the pharaohs which were in the beginning of his very long reign, actually not that long, but I wrote that, is in the end of Ramses II's long reign, his power goes a little bit down, also his foreign policy, and so he has to campaign Merenfdach into Palestine again. And we know about that from the famous Israel or Merenfdach stele. Maybe now a lot of bells are ringing in your back, because this is where I learned the first time really about archaeology, from the stele, where the first time the name Israel is mentioned. So here the major part is about the Libyan war, but in the end we have this part where it's written, "Now that I have seized Libya, Hati is at peace, Parkan has been plundered of every evil, Ashkelon has been carried off, Gaza has been captured, Yonam is made into a non-existent one, Israel waste, his seed is not." So this is where it becomes interesting for you. I will not now deal with it, what they're meaning with Israel, if Israel is a region, if it's a group of people. This is something you can all read about in very, very good articles about. For me, interesting is now this part about Gaza, which is a town in the Shephelah, because it's mentioned here for the first time, and so it must be important. So what's happening archaeological-wise in Gaza during this period is that we find a destruction not all over the site, but also the stele doesn't mention this destruction. So we have a destruction in Gaza at this very nice site in the middle of the Shephelah, in the higher Shephelah. And next to Gaza, here you have for the first time, I should have maybe brought earlier a map of the part I'm speaking of. So you have here up Gaza, and all the other sites you maybe know also from the Bible, like Ekron and Gath and Lachish you have here, and all where have this nice stars here. All of them are destroyed, probably connected to the Merenfdach campaign here. So this is the historical background of this, of the LB2. We have the cities connected with each other, connected especially to Egypt, administered by Egypt, and now let's see, and be destroyed in the end of this period. And let's see what's going on in Azekah, to show you now the material culture. Really shortly, for the ones who don't know it, Azekah is located in the at this crossroad. You see really nice in the valley. This here is the hill of Azekah. When you once approach here with the bus, it all of a sudden appears in this corner really a higher point there, and you understand, okay, why the people settled there and put their their stronghold there. So first excavated was like in the end of the 19th century by Bliss and McAllister, and just to mention that already they did like some big test trenches and excavated this what we now understand to be a Hellenistic fort. And so we had the chance now to come back and to excavate what they left us. So, but what they found were already a lot of like material culture which points to the late Bronze Age. So when we came, we knew already, okay, there is something substantial going on in this period. And we have here the scarabs, we have some figurines I will show you later, like the ones we found, and ceramic items also connected to the late Bronze Age. So now, in 2012, we came with the Lautenschläger Azekah expedition, and many of you were with us already, and I'm very happy that I can like show you like a little bit of the finds, what a few of you like actually probably were holding in their hands. So we came back, and after now all these years of excavation, we see two big phases in the late Bronze Age, and where you see all these areas. These are like T2, E3. These are the area numbers. And here, at all the areas, they were like, we found the evidence for the late Bronze Age. And first, like architectural remains, where we're now talking about, and later I will mention it again, a destruction at the end of this period. Okay, what we found, how does it look, the late Bronze Age, like material culture-wise? Won't show you a lot of architecture now, because we're speaking about like what people had in their hands. And this is, for example, this like type of cooking pots. We have like beautiful storage jars. Like these ones, which have like nice bicom decorations here. I don't know if you see it nicely, but here we have all the upper part is decorated in some kind of metope style with like hourglass symbols in it. And they have always like this kind of shape with this like a very prominent like button-like base. And the decoration goes on with like the bowls, which have also like nice red decoration, and chalices, which is probably a nice version of it. And now you saw the ceramic. Now we're coming to like another part of material culture, which is the figurines. So we found in Azekah very like beautiful fertility figurines, which is like which belong to the so-called Revadim type. You have like this one is like one not from Azekah, but there you see like how a full one looks. This one is the one from Azekah, number one here, and they are like very distinctive. They're always like opening the lady parts up for the fertility, and having, as you may see it, like two babies suckling. So it's really, this woman is very fertile, like when she is while nursing her babies, like willing. No more comments on that. So we have the Egyptian interaction here also. We have like this two of, this is like front and back, and here's another one of this called for bifacial plaques. They're about like this big. They look huge now here, but they are this big. And you have on the one side always like the pharaoh, and on the other side you have here sphinx. On this one, on the other side are two cats. So and they are like usually we're part of a ring. And we found them in these two areas, and they are very beautiful items and show us already here the Egyptian interaction at this like early period of the late Bronze Age with the site. The trade goes on. The trade goes on with Cyprus and in Mycenae. Like we have this typical like Cypriot imports, which you find all over over Palestine, which we're calling bilbil juglets, just for you for later someday, like to have it in your mind, the so-called milk bowls, and here like pieces of Mycenaean ware, which also again shows the trade connection like the entire area had. We have special trade items, which are like here, that we found the foot of this figurine here from Cyprus, and here foot and like this handle of this like interesting, like we're calling it bilbil bull, because it's like the same like the bilbil vessels, but just like in a bull shape, and they're very cute. And we just found like a few legs and a horn. One day I want a full one. So we are going on with more special like imports, which are like this huge pithoi. They're about this high. And we found them all over the site, like shirts of them, and they're coming from Cyprus. And you have to think about that, like they made really the effort to carry like these strong vessels, not only like on the ships to the coast, but to carry them from the coast all the way to Azekah. So they must have been very important. And we find them all over, but in Burna, it's a site here you see up there is Azekah. It's a small site to the south of Azekah, and there they found like complete ones. So this is why like the height is like, we know the height and everything, and it's very interesting, this type of vessels. So this is like, was now again to remind you, this was the LB2, so you saw now the little glimpse of the material culture, and to remind you, we have destructions all over. As a car, we don't know yet if this period was like, if the car was destroyed. Until now we have not really indication, but this can change. We didn't reach really this period yet. So I want to go with you into the transitional period. You now saw the LB material culture, and now I will go into the transitional period where the Iron 1, the LB3 starts. So which is like, here you see it time-wise. Some people call this late Bronze Age 3, like me, because I think it has really strong material culture of the late Bronze Age. But like in the past, this was already for other scholars the Iron Age 1. So just for you, this is why I also put the absolute dates, that you are not getting confused. The date here, the starting date, is like the sea battle from Ramses III with the Philistines. So the end of the late Bronze Age, or the beginning of the Iron One, doesn't matter how you want to call it, is characterized by the so-called crisis years, by the fall of the entire system. The big pharaoh is Ramses III now, and we have the arrival of the sea people, the biblical Philistines. Just checking the time because my clock goes off, that I don't. Okay, so yeah, this is like how it's characterized. This period. To give you more, here we have the big pharaoh of Ramses III. He really he not without reason he took the name Ramses again, because he wanted to be as big as Ramses II. So all these like big monuments, like this big statues at Medinat Habu, Karnak, they're all from his building efforts. And it's like the big pharaoh of his time. He makes Egypt big again, and also he goes out of Egypt and goes again back into Palestine, because we had like a time of stagnation after Mer-Haftach, where the pharaohs were not so interested. And again, I want to remind you that the Libyans are there on the other side of Egypt and are pressuring from there. We always keep that in mind, that Egypt is not alone there going into Palestine. It's also interacting not only with Palestine but with all the other powers. So, and I think it's people forgetting a lot when they are talking about Egypt, and especially with the interaction with the Philistines, that Egypt had like its internal problems, and especially problems with Libya on its other side. So, when we're talking about the crisis years, today we understood that what happened was probably a climate change in the Eastern Mediterranean, and especially up here when we are like in today's Turkey, and even more. That we have a dry spell. How we know that? We had a core drilling in the Sea of Galilee. It's like it was when you want to look it up. It's an article by Daphne Langwood and Israel Finkelstein, which show you very nicely how from this core of Earth they drilled out of the sea. You see the Poland, how there must have been all of a sudden a climate change with drier climates, and which resulted probably in people moving because of crop failures and the rising food prices. We have another indication, which are the Ugarit letters, which inform us about that the people are hungry, and they are sending questions out, please send us crops. So what probably happens is that people, because they are the crop is failing up there, are moving down to Palestine, where it's still a relatively good situation. There's still a good climate, or relatively good climate, so people are moving down. And this might be the background of this group of sea people coming by land and by sea, probably. So we have, why I'm saying land and sea, is because we have this famous battle of the land and sea battle by Ramses III, which is depicted in his mortuary temple in Medinat Habu. Here you have the god-like large Ramesses going into battle with his troops, and here you have all this balagan going on with the Philistine being slaughtered on their ships, and it's not calling Philistines now, it's calling them sea people, because we have probably several groups coming here. And we have then here, where are they? Yeah, you see here that they are the binded soldiers. You always see this, see people on their typical feather heads. So if you ever saw, like for example, for the excavation at Tel Aviv, there is their symbol, like the feather head guy. So feather head, we have here Philistine sea people. Exactly. When we are coming to the sea battle, scholars still discussing where that happened. It was probably at the mouth of the Nile Delta. The land battle can actually be that here Ramses, when he told his workers to report, his artists to report everything on the wall, that he actually reports several battles. There's not only one which happened. So we have actually a summary of a war kind of which happened maybe over several years. So also keep in mind, as you see how large Ramses here is, that it's something which should depict how amazing Egypt is and how amazing Ramses is. So we have here a lot of propaganda inside. Always keep in mind when you're dealing with Egyptian records that they love to show themselves as the winners, even though they might not have been really. So now, we know from this reliefs, we know that Ramses fought a group of people coming. Here you have them bound up again. They are most probably he at least kept them from going into Egypt, so he stopped them. They didn't continue further. We have another record, which is the Papyrus Harris, the first, which is from the times of Ramses IV. Which tells about how Ramses III had these invaders stop from going into Egypt, and very important, says that he settled them in their strongholds. So scholars now was thinking, okay, they were thinking, okay, we have the sea people coming, and there we have a papyrus telling us that he settled them in the strongholds. So what comes out of it is the so-called Philistine settlement paradigm. That scholars were thinking, okay, he settled them somewhere. And at the same time, we have in the archaeological record something new appearing, a new material culture, which in scholarship many people call the Mycenaean 3C1b. I will for short call it now Philistine ceramic, even though I actually don't want it. I will come to it in a second. But we have this special type of material culture which wasn't there before, appearing there in sites, together with this record from this papyrus. So scholars were connecting and saying, okay, we have this new material culture, we have this papyrus saying he settled them in strongholds, so it must be that where the material culture is, these are the strongholds where he settled them. This is something which was long, and here you have this, here you have the Philistine, it's not the entire Pentapolis because Gaza is missing, but here you have that appearing all this material culture, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gat, and Tel Mikne. So here, this must have been the strongholds where the Philistines were settled, because here we have all of a sudden the Mycenaean 3C1b appearing. And but I don't have to tell you now, and you see already here in my voice that it's this is a problematic equation, because it comes together with the understanding also of Papyrus Harris. Because when you go in the Egyptian word of stronghold, it actually came out that this must be located inside Egypt. So they come from the start a lot of questions it, but still people were rolling with it. With here you have it on the map. This is, by the way, how a Philistine bowl looks like, or let's say the material culture appearing in this period. And in red you have the sites where it appears, and in green where it didn't appear at the same time. So this was for scholars kind of a puzzle. They said, okay, we have this material culture appearing here and here, and in this sites, which are actually between Gat and Azekal, it's only 7 kilometers. It's it's nothing. You can do that in 2 hours, forward and back with a donkey, basically. So why we don't have the shirts in this side and in this side not? So a lot of scholars were puzzled, and there we have there come our big. This big names in scholars who are dealing with this, and we are solving it. One solving was the chronological separation. I will tell you in a second what it means, and a geographically segregation. What does it mean? That means chronological separation. We have here our one of our Tel Aviv stars, Israel Finkelstein, I guess you heard about him. He understood this problem of like this material culture appearing only at a specific type of sites chronologically. He said it can't be. He solved it also with later on with like tried to prove it with C14 and with like a dating method with seeds. I guess like you will talk a little bit about it later. Yes. For me it's not that important. So I will just he dated on a different different like method also. But he says that it can't be. He says that when in Lachish at a specific period there is not no ceramic from the Philistines. It can't be at the same time there it is in Gad. So Gad must be later than Lachish at this. And this is how he solves it, like just chronologically pushing the arrival then of this of the sea people of the Philistine actually down to the end of the 12th century. Yes, so this was the chronological separation approach. Then we have Shlomo Bonivonich, also like Tel Aviv University, and he solves it geographically. And he says that the people in Lachish, and also in his case Bet Shemesh, he uses Bet Shemesh as a case study. He's like it's where he's excavating. When they don't have material, Philistine material, it means that they don't want it. It means that they are aware of their own identity as Canaanites, and aware of the identity of the people in Gad or in Ekron as to be Philistines. And they said, I don't want this material culture in my town. I don't want to be a Philistine while using this material culture. These are the two main solutions. There's a third solution, which I also was going with, like just like 3 years ago. Still, that we're actually talking about a gradual process. That the people settled actually only at the coast, that only a very small amount of the ceramics actually there in the beginning, and this is why it doesn't spread. And then only like in a later phase when also Bet Shemesh has material culture of the Philistines and Lachish is destroyed and is not existing anymore, that only then the Philistines moving into the inner Shephelah, and only then we have the material culture, that we have like a process of the settlement and like only a small amount of people coming. So, but I said already in the beginning, and I had to like kind of like correct myself in my scholarly understanding. This has like as a basis that I also understood that actually the spots equal the people which are there. That means we have a pot on the side, and that means that like this a Philistine pot must have been used and produced by a Philistine person. This is something which is like behind all of this thinking, the thinking of Israel Finkelstein, the thinking of Shlomo Bonivonich, also the last approach. So, and which means like also when these pots are moving to other sides, that people are moving with them, that people are like behind this ceramic item, and this is something which I figured out like now in my PhD to be very problematic, and because I realized that we are doing that now with this material culture because of the biblical bias, because we knew about Philistines from the Bible, and not only the biblical bias but also the Egyptian bias from the Egyptian records that he settled them in his strongholds. Only this made us directly connect this ceramic item to this group of people. And so let's see the time. So yes, I would say like if you have now questions, before I move on, I will show you Azekah in this period. If you have questions or comments, or like I know it was very fast, but so please ask, and yes, you can also continue. So because now we have like the first like part of the lecture is now to show. I showed you now the material culture of the late Bronze Age, and I touched the problem and the question and the Philistines idea and how scholars. Yeah, please.
So what's your hypothesis on the last? Let's say that it's just an object without people.
This comes in the second part of the lecture. It will. This like the entire like after Azekah. This will be the. I will show you in detail what I think about it. Good. So I will continue also because like the time is limited, but it's very warm in here. I'm not used to that central heating. Good. So let's go now to Azekah. I know I'm going a little bit back again, but I wanted to touch the Philistine problem already now, because now we're coming to a part where Azekah appeared, where Azekah supposedly is existing together with Ekron, Gad, Ashdod, and Ashkelon, where there are already the Philistines and the Philistine material culture. So, Azekah, what happened in Azekah? Azekah, we have the evidence of the destruction of Azekah in this end of this period all over the site. We have massive destructions. You have here the most exposed area T2, like for example Jordan, like deck with me, like there, and had actually the destruction like in his hands. He knows exactly how it looks. And this is an aerial picture where you see the building we exposed. Just we have here the outer wall, here middle wall, it goes up here, we have column bases over here. So this is a very large like compound which you exposed in this area. And here you have like a drawing of it. And in this like compound we found a few poor individuals which didn't make it. And they are, see them here, we have somebody like crawled up in this fetal position over here, protecting from the wall. Somebody who was like this on the floor. Another one in a crawling position on his back, which was crushed by storage jars, which fell on top of him. And the one you see here in the picture, which is up here, which was holding like horns of a how it's called, of a small like calf in his hands. So these were the victims of the compound. I didn't update that because like just yesterday an article came out, a small one. I think it's for you. It might be very good to read it. It's published in Biblical Archaeology Review. It's a little bit more popular article about this destruction. So it's a very nice piece with a lot of pictures and with a summary about like all this evidence we have in this destruction. So I think Philip, you can give them the reference maybe when they, or like also you can approach me. And if not, you can go to my article from 2017 to read more about this. So what we found in this destruction, here you see like how it actually looks in the field. You see like how we excavated very carefully with socks. You have like here everywhere, these are all sherds of pots of ceramic. You have here a complete vessel. You have like here someone working on a bowl, going with ice picks and with like small paintbrushes. Here you have a basic storage jar. Here, these are the ribs of the skeleton coming out here. And it's very like, it's amazing to excavate such a thing. And so what is like actually coming out of there is we were able now, after all these years, to reconstruct the building. It was like probably only part of a building, the front part of it. And we have like the goats we didn't find. It was the artist just put it for me because I like goats. But the rest was actually there. So this is why so I gave him the location of every vessel. So he put the vessels where they exactly were located. So we have here also the people exactly where they were located. We have the 3 women which were found, the one with the horns in her hand. This one like working on a grinding installation. Another woman over here with like a boy. They were all, the women here were about 14, 15 years old. And the woman was a little bit older, about 19. And the boy was about 16 years old. So these were the victims of the destruction. And we are talking here about like a probably industrial compound. It's very large, with a lot of grinding tools and grinding installations. Also in the back, which you don't see here, a lot of ceramic stored inside there. Vessels filled with oils, which we also found out from other research. And we don't know yet what is produced like in this compound, but something was large-scale production. How it like looks a little bit, you have it also in this beautiful picture on your handout. These were all the jars, and even more than 100 of these jars we found in the compound. We have like this type of cooking pot you saw earlier, the type of bowls which I showed you earlier, which are continuing the late Bronze Age tradition. You have what is also very late Bronze Age, the decorations, which you have here, for example, on this flask, this ibexes. On the front, on the back of the flask, flask is like a pilgrim flask, which you put on your pants, on the side of your belt. You see it here on the handles, and on the back there are all switches. You see maybe, I don't know if the light you see it good, also on this bowl on the inside there are deer and ibexes painted, eating from trees. So this was a very, very popular image in the late Bronze Age, like this typical, like the animals and this type of decorations, like with the trees and also with cross patterns. This is the ceramic. We are going now to the Egyptian affiliation. We have a lot of ceramic items, like especially juglets, which you see here the paintings of, which we only find in Azekar, and then only in the Egyptian administrative centers here in the southern coastal plain, and in Lachish, which also had a strong Egyptian connection. So we see here in this this graph how these types were found only there, and only in tombs with Egyptian coffins. So there was the first like alarm bells which went on when I saw the ceramic. Ah, okay, here's something a strong connection with Egypt going on. Again, with these juglets, we have like this type of Egyptianized cooking pot. It was produced locally, but like it's an imitation of an Egyptian cooking pot, which is a closed one. Also another indication. Away from the ceramic, here you have again one of our victims. With the victims, we found beautiful scarabs and Egyptian amulets. You have here Egyptian like bats and potato figurines, and the walking Amun, like a goddess, gods, and with a lot of with more than 200 beads together. So we have like a big necklace or ornament which was like found with like the victims. And if you want to read about that, again, like approach me or like a Philip. There is a very nice article by Koch and myself, by Ido Koch and myself, which talks about the connection between these amulets and the people wearing them. Other Egyptian items, we have here this Egyptian knife, where you have here one found in Deir el-Balach. And this is the one from Azekar, which is very typical with like this peak over here and this hook on the front. And even more interesting, we have here a drinking straw from bronze, which is perforated, and it's for beer drinking. So imagine like here in this Egyptian painting, this tip over here where they're drinking the beer. Also found both of the items together in this compound with the victims. So now, in the end of this period, as I already said, Azekar is destroyed. Also Lachish, Azekar and Lachish were the only like big city-states which continued after the Merev campaign, what I told you further. All the other sites were actually rather small villages, but continued on. And the last like stronghold of the Egyptians and of the Canaanite city-states were in Azekar and Lachish, and they were like both destroyed in the end of the period. So maybe like, so now I would go into the question now in the next, which is the Iron One. Here we have the summary again, Egyptians moving out. After this destruction, the last city-states are getting destroyed, smaller sites continue to exist, and reminder, these friends appearing already at the coast, and now in the following will appear more and more. So now we're coming to the to actually when I'm setting you up the scene now to this research question, what you exactly perfectly asked, like how I interpret or how we should deal with distribution of the Philistine ceramics, how researchers like how to do a different approach on this like problem, to ask the questions: is it really an ethnic marker, or we are dealing with simple market distribution here? So, like a little bit spoiler, you see where I'm going. So now again, I have like if you want to ask questions, if something is unclear, if you want to know more about AZK, about the destruction, now is the time for this. Good, bombing you here with all like this, all the things.
How many people live in AZK?
Oh, it's a very good question. It's a very hard question. I guess we are like it was a very small village. I guess we are dealing here about like 3 digits for sure, not like about like 200. I would say 300 maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Like in this period in the city itself, not like we are not higher. Like we have also, it has a large territory connected. It was maybe like that only higher people, elites were living there. It's you haven't been to AZK, right? So you to Israel. Like it's a very high mound with a hilltop. It could have been very prestigious also to live there with this view. And until now we found only one building, because also this is the only place in the top where we expanded. And so I guess we are dealing with like 200, 300 people, like, but I could like completely wrong with this. Like it's a very hard estimation, especially when we're dealing with AZK, where we are understanding a lot of trade going on there, with maybe like only merchants like situating or coming and going. We have maybe like from this industrial compound, how many people work there, how many people are connected with there, we don't know yet. It's a very hard question. Yeah. Yeah.
What are the steps when you found a piece of a plot or a post?
Nice question. For the practical, very nice. So you find it in the field. So in a case like with the destruction layer in area T2, it's not just like a shirt which you'll find in a fill. So it will be a complete pot in the end. So it's a completely different like approach to excavate this. So the first thing is you're exposing it very like gently with a brush, and then you record the exact location in the field with like a instrument called the total station, for example, where you can see like when you can later put it on the map when you're reconstructing the house, and then you are like taking the shirts out, and then it comes it's getting washed. One piece usually gets kept for further like analysis, for example for the residue analysis, what is the content. Then after it's washed, then you are like, it gets reconstructed in the restoration lab in Tel Aviv University, and then you have the reconstructed vessel, and then you can it comes to ceramicists like me, and I will then look what type of vessel is it, where it's like from this I know in which period it belongs to, also which class of vessel it is, if it's for cooking, if it's for storing, which gives me further information. I'm also like doing like provenance analysis. I'm looking where it was produced from the clay structure. I'm taking a piece off and looking under the microscope where it comes from, where it was produced, and then it goes back first on the storage. And then when it's getting published, and then it goes to either the storeroom, or when it's a very nice vessel, to a museum. So this is like, I guess, really quick, like the life cycle after the death of a pot.
How long does it take from the farm to the museum?
This can take forever, because the publications are taking a lot of time. But like, let's say from the finding to the when I get it in my hand and where I did my research, this can take only like half a year or so. This goes very fast. Things like stops really rapidly in like to when the publication process starts, because then it gets like it gets published in a big volume with other researchers. Like a lot of people have to write chapters. Then it goes to publication. So we are now at the moment working on the first publication of AZK. So these ceramics are at the moment in the process. So they came out of the ground 2012, 2013, and you see now it's already 2018. So this is like how much time already passed, and it will take us, I guess, at least 2020 until it comes out, the report. So you have here like about 8 years of research going into, and of like waiting and seeing and like publishing and everything. Yeah. Yes.
Right. wonder if you could say something more about the destruction itself. If it's like an instance or a decay element, or is it?
It's yeah, like you see from the you see that we have for this like 4 victims, for example, that was a rapid destruction. It happened in one time. They probably were surprised, or they were not able to go out, because it's something, it's extraordinary to find so many victims in a destroyed building. Many times in archaeology you find destroyed buildings without victims, because they were able to go out, to escape, to sometimes, as you said, like it can be not all at once. It can, like, the building can be destroyed, the destruction can take a few years because it just falls down after a while. But no, here in this case it was like a one-time event. We have fire. We found indication of fire everywhere. So it was either that the oil lamp fell and set it on fire, or that like there were like it was fired up by like an outer source, like arrowheads, with fire, with like which were put on the roofs. Then this is the next question: if it's like some human destruction, human-caused destruction, or like a naturally caused destruction. There are a lot of people, for example, also like Odette Lipschitz still holds on the earthquake theory, which I am like not support, because of several reasons. Like I think like people would have probably taken out the victims after the earthquake, for example, or like or their valuables. Also, the site was completely abandoned for 200 years afterwards. Azekah was not settled during the Iron One. Only when Judah like came, the kingdom of Judah expanded, Azekah was resettled. So there was also a reason why people didn't come back to the site. But still, like the earthquake hypothesis is not out yet. It can be that that in the night the earthquake happened, swept over a few oil lamps. They set like the oil in the jars on fire and caused like an inferno there. Also absolutely possible. I have to say that also we found a few weapons there. We found a few arrowheads and spearheads. Like also.
So plundering could also be a distribution kind of.
It's exactly. This is actually another nice theory is that like the victims actually in the buildings are actually like people plundering the building, like that the actual like people living there already left, and robbers came in, took the valuables and didn't make it out before the building collapsed. It's also like one of the theories, yeah. And it's actually very like good like thing to keep in mind that when we find a destruction which looks like Pompeii event, that there is not such a thing like a Pompeii event, because you have always this like a thing of plundering, for example. Afterwards you have like later periods intruding like into this, like digging like pits and disturbing the earlier things. So it's a completely different chapter of like dealing with like this evidence, but we always have to keep in mind this picture doesn't have to be the picture of this moment, but in this case we are coming very close to the picture, yeah, to this moment. Yeah.
At the reconstruction, there was the pots were depicted on the rooftop.
Yeah.
How did you deduce that, and why did they put them on the roof?
They put it like why they put them on the roof, probably for storage. They like you see, like it can also be that they were like that they were not on top of the roof, but like were holed maybe like nets below the roof, something like that. And we don't know exactly, because we are not able to detect really organic matters with our eyes. Only with like pollen analysis we can see like organic matters, like in this the Shephelah, because it's so like humid. How I'm saying that there must be a roof which stuff was stored on top or like below it is because we found 2 layers of destruction and a thin layer in between. So and especially the poor victim, number 1 I will call her, because she was the first when we found her. She for her, you said amazingly, you found first like 3 jars. And when we removed the 3 jars below, there was the person lying. And she had like the handle of the storage jar stuck into her head. So they must come from somewhere. So, and in general, we have like 2 layers. We had first like a big layer of ceramics. When we moved it away, we thought, okay, we now have to be on the floors. And all of a sudden we realized there's another layer below of ceramics. So we have like two layers of things, which one coming from above. And another victim, for example, was like reconstructed, like the anthropologist reconstructed her death, that she was like in a protective position like this. He could like see in the fractures in this arm that it was like a fracture which goes like that she was protecting herself from something from falling above. So it goes, a few things, indication go together, which makes us reconstruct the roof like that here. These are very good archaeology questions. I would never, like, when I think about myself, like, as a theology student, like, they should all come. Like, really. No, they're putting on the point. Very good. Good, so let's continue and let's have the second, or like, it's not as long as the first part, so don't worry. I'm like not going, we are now going to this question of the distribution of Philistine ceramics. And now to bring you also in the time again, we are now approximately in the end of the 12th and the 10th, the 11th and the beginning of the 10th century here, in the Iron Age 1, from the research point of view. People looking at this period looked always, in the very past they looked where are the Israelites, but I think in scholarship we are like long past, like about Israel like conquering the lands and taking over the cities. So we are now asking about who and where are the Philistines and who and where are the Canaanites. This were questions which were asked to this on this transitional period of the Iron Age 1. So again, to remind you, we had like the theories before about the understanding of arrival of this material culture, paired with the records of Egypt and with the biblical account. People understanding this as either chronologically, that like we have to push back the arrival, or geographically, that we have people being aware of the identity and refusing to take other material culture and to strengthen their own. So just remember, and like the theory of like more like slowly arrival of the Philistines, only in the coast and then moving into the Shephelah. And as I already said, like this are always having the equations, pots equal the people. So now we have, like, when we are looking at that, we can on the one hand, from the start, we can say, we can ask like these people before ask or like understood it like that Philistine ceramic equals, or this new ceramic equals Philistines, the people. There is also the option that we have, that we are dealing here with imports from Cyprus or from Macedonia. And then we have like also the option that we are dealing with the imitation of imports. So as I said, like the scholars before, they were like underlying this equation of Philistine ceramic equals the Philistines. People which are thought that these are imports, you can take away like their basis, because all these ceramics are produced locally. Like they are not from the ceramic material, they're coming from the Shephelah and the southern coast plain, they are not from Mycenae. You can see that quite well with your own eye, and when with like investigation of NAA and petrography, it was proven several times already. Sea people, Philistine ceramic is not an import. Now the option of the imitation of import, and here you see like an earlier one, in the late Bronze Age, they loved to imitate, this is a Mycenaean vessel, and here is like a local imitation of it. They love to do that. This theory, which is like mostly advocated by Susan Sherrod, was very taken by a lot of scholars, and it's a good starting point, because there we are getting a little bit away from the pot and people equation, and it helps very much. I don't think that works very well, because it doesn't take into account a lot of other factors. For example, that we are having with like the imitation of with this new material culture, we're having coming in a new way of making pots. So the production is different a little bit. So it seems to be that there are other new type of potters are coming here producing this vessel. Plus, they are very, very nicely produced. You see how, compared to this one, pretty ugly this imitation is. So the late bronze people didn't know how to make really beautiful pottery. the people who made the Mycenaean 3C 1B pottery, the Philistine pottery, you see that they know. They use the local ceramic, but the pots are very well made, so it's something which is like all of a sudden new in the repertoire. Plus, we don't always, what I completely didn't mention to you yet, was that we are not talking about, not only talking about the ceramic coming, but we have more indicators of the sea people coming. We have like hearth, for example, in Utah. We have loom weights and food habits. We have also not only like the bowls which I showed you, we have also cooking ware, which is new. So Susan Sherrod doesn't take this into account, and this is a completely different story here. So I also think we can't think about like the Mycenaean 3C 1B Philistine ceramic as an imitation of an import. So people who are like understood like who thought that like this type of ceramic is representing like a group of people, they had always like this bias that I told you before. They looked to find the biblical Philistines, the strong group who stands against Judah, who stands against David and like and who fights. So they always thought that like understood the Philistines to be a colonial power, which is superior to the Canaanites. So they're coming and overthrowing them, and like a strong population sitting in against the small poor Canaanites. This is the first thought what was behind there. This means also that they understood, everyone understood the Philistines to be a elite group, and that they're actually like these people are actually aware of their own ethnicity, so that we have actually in Bet Shemesh, for example, sitting people which are thinking, okay, we are the Canaanites, and that you have in Gad people thinking, okay, we are the Philistines. Like this is a thought which you always have to remind, which is something which was actually a little bit put probably from the scholars on these people, which doesn't have to be necessarily something what they thought. They probably thought, we are the Bet Shemenites, like or we are like the Gathites or the Azekahites. So that that like the people from Gad have to think, okay, we are Philistine, we belong, Ekron are the same people. Like this, just like that you are like put a question mark behind that when you're thinking about this. So, and with all this in mind, so when you are like starting researching the ceramic, they were directly focusing always on the Aegean trades, because they thought, okay, the sea people, the Philistines, are coming from the Aegean, from Mycenae, from today Turkey, from Greece. So when they researched the pots, they were looking what is Mycenaean, what is Aegean in this pot. They were looking what is the ethnic marker of this pot. They were blending out a little bit other research questions which were naturally usually asked when we're dealing with ceramics. So when I was like, now comes finally about how I was starting to research this pot, I understood like in the new types. I tried my best to blend out this pot to see it as a Philistine pot. So I said, okay, this is a new type coming into my ceramic repertoire, and I saw, and I was looking for how this pot, how the local ceramic are reactive to this new trade coming in, to this new ceramic item, because in earlier periods or also later, we always like look about like how the local production of pottery production is reacting with the new production coming in. In actually this case, scholars never really looked in that. On that, like with this topic, they looked the other way around. They looked how the local ceramic is influencing the newcomers, but like not how the new type is influencing the local ceramic repertoire. So, so there came looking like this. Then you can like ask new questions. You can ask the question, okay, if when you have this like new ware, this Philistine pot, does it have to be necessarily be used by only the new people? Can it be used by the Canaanites also? And so you get a different view on the distribution patterns, and also in general on the idea that pot equal people. So now to show that again, like a little bit in pictures. So in front of you have a lot of very common ware of the late Bronze Age ceramics, which I already showed you, which earlier in the presentation. You have this type of cooking pot, you have these bowls over here, you have here this type of decorations on the storage jars, and you have this beautiful flask over there. In the Iron One, the Philistine Sea People ceramic arrives, this new material culture arrives, which is like mainly this, which is called bell-shaped balls and craters. This jar, it's called beer jug, it has a perforation in the front there, and this type of cooking pot, which is a closed cooking pot with a handle and a base, and a flat base. And you have here, just here, the beautiful birds. Mostly you have on the bowls here this circular decoration, here this band decoration. Leave it like that. Scholars said, okay, this is the ceramic repertoire of the Iron One. What scholars didn't notice is that there actually something happens in the local repertoire also with this new material culture arriving. What happens is decorations disappear in the local ceramic. This typical late Bronze Age decoration disappears. So what I showed you earlier, this nice metope styles with like this animal decorations, the zigzag decoration, the palm trees, gone. In the end, starting from the end of the 12th century, there are the last small examples. In the 11th century, you don't have any more this local decorations. So something happens with the market. So this is what you have then in the end. You have plainware from the local style, and you have this new dishes, their new fancy tableware, which is the Philistine ceramic. In addition, something new appears in the local ceramic. This is a new type of decoration, which was like not that expressed anymore. This is to decorate bowls now with like a circular pattern, with like also like kind of a strudel in the lower part in the middle. And this is like reminds somebody very much on the Philistine bowls. So the pot, you see that the potters seem to have reacted to the new material culture coming in. So what you can say at least is that there are like few potters arrived to the country, put in a new material culture, which was probably very much liked also by the local population. And the potters reacted to that, the local ones, and also they stopped producing their old like decoration styles because the people didn't buy them anymore probably. And they saw like, okay, they're going closer to what the newcomers bring us, and this is like this circular decorations. So you have like this, so as I said already, you have this highly decorated fineware, the bowls, the jars, with like the ibex and the deers. They're getting like replaced by a new type of fineware. And the local potters, like they are like adapting their repertoire with this. And so you see like that the production of ceramic is actually influenced also by the demand of the people. And so as a result, you have to take into consideration that the people who consumed the new ceramic are not like only the newcomers, or maybe like even only a small fraction of that were actually newcomers, that actually the local Canaanites were the buyers of this, could have been the buyers of these pots. So can we now like think about, when we're thinking about distribution of vessels, like for example like Israel Finkelstein was dealing with, like or like Stromboli, can we think about distribution of people also? Can we do this equation even anymore? And so when we have here, now we have Ekron, the Philistines, this Philistine site, as we say, the site which has a lot of this material culture. When we see in the past, it was seen that like to Batash has a lot of material culture from the Philistines. So Batash was all of a sudden a Philistine city. Gezer and Bet Shemesh have almost none of this material culture, just a few, and they were all of a sudden the Canaanite city. So, but what about like now thinking that Batash as a very small site didn't have its own market maybe, and went to buy in Ekron the Philistine ceramic, this like new ceramic material culture. See how problematic it is to speak about it without using Philistine here. And Bet Shemesh had maybe still its own market, or probably its own market, produced its own ceramic, and went only a few times to Ekron, which was a little bit far away, to buy like, but they still bought from this material culture. The same for Gezer. So this is a completely new thing to think about this distribution pattern, talking about market distribution. It comes together that we are completely took out until now the cookware, where also, like for example, Shlomo Boni-Womich is ignoring completely that we have this Philistine cookware, not only a high number in Batash and Ekron, but actually equally high number in Bet Shemesh. So the cookware, a super highly like charged, ethnic charged like thing, like what is like more like traditional than a cooking pot. When you're cooking like your mother is cooking, you know, it's something not you change tomorrow, like what you cook, like it's something you use for generations. This is actually like found in Bet Shemesh in very high numbers, and it shows that like people were like using the new material culture in these ways. So so now like to wrap everything up, so we see that like the Canaanite material culture like continued to the Iron One with like the local sawing of the jars, and that the new material culture is arriving, probably with like the potters coming with it and producing it there. They're probably Ekron and Tel Aviv are the larger city-states, and that they have together with Ashdod and Ekron, they are the production centers of the new material culture. This was probably traded to the surrounding villages, and was consumed by the local population. And this comes a little bit too early, because I wanted to also tell you that actually strengthening this theory is like more like negative evidence when you go to the north of the country. There you don't have, in the area of Megiddo, when you're going more up to the north in Palestine, you have there no production centers of this new material cultures. And there you have like also less of this material cultures. Plus you have like the local decoration styles are continuing there. Potters are still producing local decorated ceramics. They even like it develops there. Like, it's called New Canaanite style, and there's a new like negative evidence which might support like the different of market and production place in the south. So now I thank you, and I want to open up if you have questions, and I hope I was clear enough, because it's very in-depth ceramic studies like going on here.
Yes. First of all, we should thank Sabine for her lecture. 2 lectures,
it
but
was like
into one. So thank you very much. Now we have a few minutes for questions, so please.
Yeah.
Just a small question about the decorations, the paintings, or this kind of patterns, because it reminds me a little bit of when it's on the inside of the jar, like you will find today, like measuring how much content.
Ah, very nice, yeah.
And also this, on the other wall, there's this kind of, like you see in the building, was it like maybe it had a previous functioning as a lid or leather lid or something to tie around, like a rope?
Ah, no, it's like it's. You mean that like there was a plastic decoration like before?
I mean, no, the painting is like this. It could be a rope.
Ah, it could resemble a rope. It's interesting. No, it's very good comment. Yeah,
so
like it's.
The question is maybe, what these particular objects was used for.
So like usually like they're saying for the bowls, like for drinking liquids. Yeah. We don't know it for sure. We have residue analysis on what was stored in them or what was used in them. Most until now on the bowls it was like only a few items like it was done, and that were mostly liquids like oils also. But this was in our case in Azekar very special, I think, for the production center. So it's hard to say. But just thinking what people are using in a daily life, this were their drinking vessels or like liquid, like consumption vessels. But I think it's measuring, like it's a very nice idea, and again shows like what you have to take into consideration when you're speaking about like new ceramics and the use of new ceramics coming into a repertoire. That maybe a functional new functional thing comes in, and people are thinking, great, I can use this pot now for measuring, so let's buy more of this, and I don't want to use my old ones really anymore because they don't have such good function. Yes?
Sorry, do you have any explanation for why people change their decorations of the pots?
It's something like really maybe liking, like so that they like it.
Trend, yeah.
Exactly, like because you have to also understand that this Canaanite decorations, they were like in the end of the period they were not that nice anymore. The animals, the potters, they were not that skilled anymore as artists. And then there comes in like a new decoration style with this new ceramics, which are beautiful, which are nice. So like people are buying more, might have been bought more from the more beautiful looking ones than from the old ones. So this would be one explanation. Another one we have always to think about that what I told you already before, that Azekah and Lachish were completely destroyed, the last city-states, and it might be that with them also potters' workshops were destroyed and potters died, which couldn't carry on their knowledge of this old decoration. It's another equation, another part in this equation which you have to take into consideration. Yeah.
I know the topic is Protestant people, but can anthropology help solving the question of identity, Philistines?
Yeah, like
we can see some migration in the region.
Yeah. So like where they're coming from, the Philistines, it's like from this part. It's a completely different question. Like here we are moving out, and here also we have to again think did really people arrive, which we can call Philistine? I think yes. At least the potters arrived from somewhere. And we can look at the with like the connection to the Mycenaean world from the ceramics here, and that they probably come like several group up from modern day like Turkic Greek, and but here there are like several other like very good like articles which are like by Lewis Hitchcock, for example, and Aaron Mayer, which I want to refer you, where they are summing up very much about this discussion about where this people are coming from and what is their actual like identity. And for us it was more the question of identity. Do, for example, the Canaanites identify themselves as Canaanites contrary to the Philistines in Gad? So the question is also like even if potters or a small group of people is arriving in the beginning in the end of the 12th century or during the 12th century, is half a century later, do they still think that they are different from and now comes also the question why we have then still several hundred years later this the strong biblical idea of the Philistines. This is a completely new question now, and which is like more for you now to expand on for the biblical scholars, like how we are like now connecting it with like the biblical record and like this because there is a strong identity which is called Philistines. Like yeah.
The question is not related to the plot very much, but do we know any burials or cemeteries close to those sites?
We have
how far from those sites they are?
there is from the Philistine burials we have in Ashkelon. Also, like it's a very nice Archaeological Review article from 2015, 16, but I'm not sorry, like I don't know exactly, but from the recent years. Where you can look at, and there they are published in their cemetery. I think it was located at the site, when I remember it right. Then we have in Tel Aviv, we have like tombs which were full of like this ceramics, but again, which doesn't have to mean that there are Philistines buried there. But I think in Ashkelon, because we are here also have a coastal site, I think there they really show a strong connection, which is like not local. So, but it's something like for you to like read up, or like for me in the future also to read up. But you can. There are nice things published about it. Yes.
A small question on methodology, or because I'm familiar with another huge attempt to redefine a certain kind of migratory knowledge, and it's Martin Bernal's Black Athena. I don't know if you're familiar with that, or if that touches or overlaps.
Like not that, but it's a no, like but like I want to talk with you about that. I want to know more.
Also, just cute because he's using archaeology to claim that Western kind of identity was having like Middle Eastern or an African.
Yeah.
And he's talking all about Egypt and
nice.
these ways of moving.
Yeah.
Just curious if you
No, not yet, but want to, yeah.
And it provides the Discourse
Yeah.
about Wissenschaft,
Yeah.
construction.
Exactly. Nice.